This episode is sponsored by Misplay. I've been super into playing games on my phone lately, but I didn't realize I could earn actual rewards for gaming. Misplay is a loyalty app for mobile gamers to earn gift cards for brands like Amazon, Walmart, Xbox, and even Visa, which is pretty much a gift card for everything. With over $100 million in gift cards already redeemed, it's time to join in on the fun and make your game time work for you. Use our code BABISH50 to try out Misplay and get free points for just signing up. Check out the info in the description.
Lasagna, うまいにゃんでよ。
おい、猫回し！お風呂なんてダメだよ。傷が開く。食い物も軽くだ。なんで左手も使ってんだよ。
ゴロにゃにゃごにゃ。
Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Anime with Alvin, where this week we're going to be making the 4-cheese lasagna from One Piece, a very layered, rich, and decadent lasagna that Cat Viper loves, which seemingly comes with a huge layer of cheese on top, so that's going to be kind of fun. We've made a few lasagnas here on this show, and I thought it'd be fun to go for more of an American-style lasagna this time. So to start, we're going to make the meat sauce. I've got here a pound of hot Italian sausage and a pound of sweet Italian sausage. We're going to go ahead and take the casings off and throw the remaining meat into a pot just to cook down until it starts to brown a little bit. But this is going to take a little bit of time, so in the meantime we're going to chop up 2 small onions and 4 garlic cloves while the meat sort of sits there and breaks down. Now I realized that a wooden spoon might not be the best tool for the job, so I went for more of like a potato masher to kind of break these up in a little smaller bits. I think having chunks of meat is nice, but then when they're too large in a lasagna they can be a little bit distracting as it doesn't really absorb a lot of the sauce. So once the onions and garlic go in, we're going to cook that for a little bit. Once the meat is broken up quite nicely and a lot of the water has started to come out, we're going to add in a tablespoon of dried oregano, a tablespoon of dried basil, half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, and give that a pretty good mix. Then we're going to add in approximately a quarter cup of this tomato paste here and let that cook down until it is nice and beautifully red inside. Following that, we're going to throw in 2 28-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes. Stir that up, bring that up to a simmer, and let that cook off camera for about 2 hours or so until the meat has started to break down and the sauce is nice and bubbly. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and work on the ricotta layer for the lasagna. Now personally, I don't really usually put a ricotta layer in my lasagna, but I think for this one it definitely makes a lot of sense. Cats like milk, and ricotta has a lot of milk because it's made from milk, so therefore there should be a lot of ricotta in this lasagna. We're going to start with a whole pound of whole milk ricotta cheese, throw in 2 eggs, about a half cup of finely grated pecorino cheese, mix that all up until it is nice and smooth. We're going to go ahead and set that aside and wait for about another hour until our meat sauce has finished cooking. Fast forward to another hour, our meat sauce is done. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. That is very hot. The sauce has now burned the roof of my mouth and my taste buds are no longer trustworthy for the next 5 hours. Our sauce is still a little bit more chunky than normal, and looking at the lasagna from the anime, it seems like the layers in the lasagna were quite thin, so I'm going to go ahead and immersion blend this just a little bit to break up those big lumps. Now it's time to assemble. For this style of lasagna, I decided to go with no boil noodles because in the anime the lasagna does look like it has pretty flat layers, and I think using those curly thicker noodles can give you a little bit too much of those waviness, although those are quite delicious because they are thicker and a little bit chewier if you don't cook them as much. So in a 9x13 baking dish, we're going to go ahead and assemble our lasagna. I usually like to start with a layer of sauce at the bottom of the pan, that you make sure that the lasagna noodles don't burn, and when you go ahead and take out a slice, it doesn't really make it that sticky. We're going to go ahead and layer some no-boil noodles across in an even pattern, followed by another meat sauce layer. The interesting thing about this lasagna, if you look at the image from the anime, is that it's only noodles and meat sauce for about the first 5 layers. It seems like in the show, they decided to go with more something that looks like a shepherd's pie or a moussaka, which has more of the white topping on top, which I'm guessing is where all the ricotta is going to end up instead of going in between the layers. Fascinating technique, I'm excited to try it. So instead of going meat sauce, noodles, ricotta, we're just going to go alternating back and forth between the meat sauce and the noodles until we've created about 5 layers or so, making sure to use an offset spatula to even it out in the middle because we want these layers to be as clean and as straight as possible. Once the lasagna is approximately 60% of the height of the pan, we're going to go ahead and dump the entire mixture of ricotta on top, making sure to smooth that out across all sides with another offset spatula until the whole thing is beautifully white and beautifully flat. Now this is a 4-cheese lasagna. We've only used ricotta cheese and pecorino cheese so far, so we're missing 2. For a nice bubbly top, how about some low moisture mozzarella? I have a couple of blocks on the side which I'm going to go ahead and try to cut some thin slices to put right on top of the lasagna, but not too thin because, well, if you have thick slices of cheese, that makes for a cheesy lasagna, and I don't really hear anybody complaining about cheesy lasagna. These roughly cut slices are going to go right right on top, some definitely thicker than others, both intentional and unintentional at the same time. Once the cheese blanket has been laid, we're going to go ahead and finish off with our fourth and final cheese, Parmigiano Reggiano. Just a bit of that grated right on top to give it a nice bit of salty punch and browning at the very end. Now this is a pretty thick lasagna with a lot of elements, so in order to bake this properly, we're first going to wrap it in foil so that the top doesn't really dry out and burn before the rest of the lasagna is cooked. This is going to go into the oven and bake for about 20 minutes at 450 degrees. Then we're going to remove the foil and let it cook for another 10 to 15 minutes or so until the top is nice and bubbly. At which point we're going to take out our lasagna and admire this beautifully bubbly cheesy goodness right on top. The worst part about lasagna is that you have to wait quite some time before you cut into it. It must be done before we can enjoy it. Otherwise, you cut into it and you made lasagna soup. It's been about an hour or so. We just kind of sat in the corner and twiddled our thumbs until this thing was cool enough to cut. So we're going to come back and cut a nice little slice. Now the cross section on this is very interesting. Usually lasagna has a beautiful alternating red and white and yellow cross section. This one is a little bit different, where a lot of the red and the brown is on the bottom and you have a thick layer of white and yellow on top. Just because this is a lot of food, I'm going to go ahead and pre-divide this lasagna up to make sure that everybody in the studio gets to take home a huge helping of it for later. I have to say, this looks quite appetizing, almost more appetizing than a typical slice of lasagna. We're going to go ahead and finish this off by garnishing with some freshly hand-torn basil from a little pot that we got at the store. And then, well, it's time to eat. Now the flavor and texture on this is super interesting. Because of the way that we separated the layers into all meat and noodles on the bottom and all cheese on top, you get more of a distinct contrast. First you taste a heavy blast of, meat, noodles, tomatoes, and sauce, and then it counters really nicely once you get to that wave of ricotta and cheese, really creamy. It's like drinking a coffee that has that cream topping, but you don't really mix it in too much, so you get nice bursts of each instead of mixing it all together. I almost prefer this more than a typical lasagna where it's evenly layered throughout, which is probably why I don't prefer the ricotta ones in the first place. But in this case, with the elements all separate, I think it actually tastes more delicious than the original version. So I am excited that this little separation of church and state worked out pretty well for us this time. And well, we invited everybody down to come eat it, no matter what they were doing, because this is a very important task to be had. Lasagna should take any priority over anything that happens in anyone's schedule, and I think based on everybody's reactions, it was well worth the sacrifice. And the best part is, we'll all have lasagna to enjoy for at least one more meal or so. Thanks again to Misplay for supporting today's episode. Misplay makes it possible to earn gift cards just by playing new games. There's lots to explore, from puzzle, word, and card games to strategy, adventure, and RPGs. Just play, watch the points accumulate, and use them towards your favorite gift cards in the shop. I'm working my way towards an Amazon gift card so I can get myself some new cookware. Visit misplay.com/babish or click the link in the description now to download Misplay for free. Using that link not only helps support this channel, but you'll also get closer to your first gift card with 200 bonus points, and that's not to mention another 50 free points when you use our code BABISH50 inside the app. See the description for all of the details.